right. Good afternoon, everybody. Should I move this or? Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the 4th annual WiSys Quick Pitch competition here at UW Eau-Claire. My name is Jennifer Cook, and I'm the Associate Director for WiSys. For those of you who aren't familiar with WiSys, we are an independent, nonprofit supporting organization of the University of Wisconsin system, and we serve as the designated technology transfer office for the comprehensive campuses to your colleges and the statewide extension. So we're pleased to be partnering today with the Office of Research and Sponsor Programs here at Eau-Claire, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Karen Havum of the ORSP and Dr. Matt Jewell, Chair of the Quick Pitch Planning Committee here today. Thank you for your efforts on getting us here. So what is the Quick Pitch? So this is a competition that aims to encourage innovative and entrepreneurial thinking by inspiring students from all academic disciplines to consider the impact that their research may have on society, really putting the why behind what they're doing. So today, students will describe their research in 3 minutes or less, and they will be judged based on the overall quality of their pitch, in particular, their ability to keep within their time limit, as well as articulating the topic of their research in lay terms, discussing the problem or unmet need that's being addressed by their research, sharing the importance of their findings, and ultimately drawing conclusions as to how their research may impact the economy or the society. So last month, presenters here today all attended a training workshop and received one-on-one feedback on their pitches. Students will be competing for a cash prize in 2 categories, Science and Technology and Social Sciences and Humanities, with the first place winner taking home a prize of $250 in each category, and the second place winner taking home a prize of $125 in each category. So in addition, and new to this year, we are pleased to also offer a People's Choice Award, sponsored by UW Eau-Claire, which will be given to the student who receives the most votes during today's pitch. So we have Abby here, who's going to be handing out ballots, and we'll be collecting these at the end of the pitches, and we'll award that prize during the ceremony. So speaking of winners and judges, I would like to introduce our esteemed panel of judges here. So from UW Eau-Claire and WiSys Quick Pitch veterans, we are pleased to have your own Chancellor James Smith and Provost Patricia Klein. You're both most welcome. We're also pleased to have 2 UW Eau-Claire Foundation members join us today. From TDK, we have Guy Van Raper, and from Intel, Stephen Andringa. Last but not least, from UW System, we have David Boardman, Government Relations Specialist. Thank you all for taking your time out of your schedules today and joining us. I do hope you enjoy the event. So all students who are participating in today's competition are guaranteed a scholarship to attend the 11th Annual Wisconsin Science and Technology Symposium, which is scheduled to take place at UW Parkside July 30th and 31st. And the winner of today's competition will have the opportunity to represent UW Eau-Claire and compete in the state final, which will be held during the symposium. You'll compete against 10 different campuses across the state, and it's really a great opportunity for students because you'll be presenting in front of an audience of 250 colleagues throughout the state. So it's a really great way to get your research out there. So before we get started, I'd like to invite Dr. Matt Jewell up to say a few words.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. And I do just want to add my thanks to WiSys for making this possible today. It's nice to be able to give you more than a pat on the back for your work, and that's thanks to them. So thanks, Jennifer, for being a part of it. Let me try to do my own quick pitch. Let me try to say very succinctly why I'm part of Quick Pitch and why I think this is important. So just 2 reasons for you. Number 1, we have got all kinds of great research going on all across this campus. And this is just one of the most unique, I think, interesting ways to present and showcase that work. You're going to hear students today from philosophy, from biology, from chemistry, material science, almost every part of the campus you can imagine. And I think this is a really, really unique way to showcase what those students are doing. Also, second, I think that basically this idea of having to communicate briefly and clearly what you do and why it's important, it's kind of like the rest of your life. I mean, there's almost like nothing else you have to do as an adult except that. I mean, just ask these people in the front row. They'll agree with me. So it's actually kind of critical life skill. And so I think it's a good way for us to work on that. I was really privileged to work this semester with a great team of faculty that went out there and helped solicit this group of students that you see here and to help do all the training. And so it really was kind of many hands make light work. So I'm really grateful for all of them. The committee was myself, Karen Havholm, Ann Rupnow, Martha Fay, Carla Ligorio, David Soul, Angela Wong, Sarah Vitali, and then of course Jennifer from WiSys, and Annika Johnson was our student rep. So thanks everybody for your help, was terrific, and enjoy the event.
All right, thanks Dr. Joel. So before we get started, just for all students who are presenting today, if you're on deck, so in other words, if you're next up, please make your way down to the front in advance of the next pitch so that we can keep the ball rolling. Also, Abby here, who's in the yellow shirt, will be holding up time cards when you're at 1 minute and when you're at 0 minutes. So just keep an eye out for her too on your time. We're not going to yank you off stage, but just be conscious of that. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Joseph Ackerson from Material Science and Engineering, presenting on exploring the electrochemistry of organosulfides as high-capacity cathode materials from lithium battery. Welcome.
Who here uses a smartphone? Who here has gone through the day and has checked their phone and been surprised how low their battery life is? I know I have. This seems to be a very common occurrence. Hi, my name is Joseph Ackerson, and for a year now, I've been researching new types of batteries. Currently, we use lithium-ion batteries, which are very expensive to produce and harmful for the environment. This is because the positive end of these batteries are made out of a metal cobalt. Now, currently, there is a new battery being developed that replaces the metal cobalt with a non-metal sulfur, appropriately named the lithium sulfur battery. Now, these batteries are cheaper to produce and more environmentally friendly and can hold 5 times more energy than these traditional batteries. Now, there is only one problem with these batteries right now: rapid capacity fading. Now, this essentially means that only after a few charges does the battery lose its ability to hold energy, making it useless. My research involves using computer simulations to find new molecules that, when mixed with the non-metal sulfur, can actually reduce these negative effects. Now, there are so many different kinds of molecules to use that computer simulations can save money and time and find the most promising molecules to use before physically experimenting with them. With these new molecules that I find, I compare my results from other researchers from the University of Oregon and the University of Purdue. They are the ones who are physically actually experimenting on these molecules. Our results show that using specific molecules can actually solve and diminish this negative effect of the capacity fading. Hopefully someday soon that these batteries can be fully developed and used in technology today, such as our smartphones. Not only could you charge your smartphone within a week instead of a day, a week, but also it can be cheaper to produce and more environmentally friendly. Hopefully someday you will never have to worry about your phone's battery life again. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the judges?
How much of a impact do you think it could be? So right now you get a day over, I mean, is it a week or 2 weeks or?
So right now that the batteries can hold so much energy than traditional batteries, it can, with smartphones specifically, you would have to charge your phone once a week, then once a day. It also can be used in the electronic car market that is booming right now. So a lot of those applications can be used, and that can save so much energy and resources with how much it can hold.
Sure.
All right, a round of applause for Joseph. All right, next up we have Leanne Becker and Lindsey Deans from Communication Sciences and Disorders presenting on Follow for Follow, the implications of required Twitter engagement in higher education.
Hi, I'm Leanne Becker. And I'm Lindsey Deans, and we are both senior communication sciences and disorders majors, and our project investigated the implementation of Twitter in an online graduate course for CSD students.
UW-Eau-Claire is one of 17 universities in the nation that offers an online graduate course for speech-language therapists. Our study looked specifically at an online graduate course in aphasia. And aphasia is a disorder in which someone has suffered a brain injury and it can negatively impact the way they use language. We decided to look at Twitter as opposed to a different social media platform such as Facebook because there was already a large presence of individuals who work with people who have aphasia and research the disorder.
Students were required to use Twitter to find information about aphasia, therapy specifically related to the disorder, and connect with professionals who also study aphasia. They were then asked to screenshot their findings and post them to a class page where they were able to share information and resources among each other. Finally, they were required to write a summary regarding their thoughts and attitudes on the required Twitter engagement and whether they felt they benefited from being part of the course curriculum.
Twitter engagement has the potential to increase student collaboration, especially within an online cohort. Furthermore, it has the chance to foster a broader sense of community amongst speech-language pathologists and academia as a whole. Integrating Twitter into the classroom in this way is nearly as unique as Eau-Claire's online graduate program itself.
Most of the students appeared to have found Twitter beneficial, as they stated they found information about aphasia that they otherwise would not have been exposed to. UW-Eau-Claire has a strong Twitter presence as a university. Maybe you've tweeted at Chancellor Jim or have seen him connect with his future and current Blue Golds. Taking this one step further, the connections that were established through Twitter for the online CSD graduate students allowed them to collaborate and expand upon the work of others in the field. They also noted that they will be able to carry these resources that they found with them into their professional careers and benefit future clients.
Speech-language pathologists are required to complete continuing education hours each year, and several students in our studies indicated that they will use Twitter to find verified providers. Additionally, some students have continued to tweet even after the course in the absence of an academic obligation. Twitter lays down the foundational tools and resources necessary for student support beyond the classroom. These tools are pivotal for students' academic growth and growth as clinicians.
Thank you for your time and attention. Tweet us at linsbetty7.
At leonars24.
Any questions from our judges?
Well, what were the parameters of the tweets you could do? Did you give them hints, like it has to be about XYZ, it has to be what?
Yes, it has. The tweets they were required to find was about the disorder of aphasia and therapy specifically related to the disorder. And really we were trying to foster the connections between the professionals who study aphasia that have that larger presence on Twitter. Now it's like a growing presence of these professionals who are sharing their research and their information and what they're doing. So to make those connections and to work off of what they're doing currently.
All right. Next up, we have Madison Bacon from Political Science presenting on Beyond the Numbers, exploring more completely and the cyberbullying experience of adolescents.
Hello, I'm Madison Bacon, a senior psychology major here at Eau-Claire, and I have been working with Dr. Justin Patchen in the Department of Criminal Justice for the past 3 years. Our research heavily focuses on cyberbullying. Who is this happening to? How many students are affected? And in our most recent project, what is the most effective way to stop it? Previous research has suggested that about 27% of students in middle and high school have been victims of cyberbullying at some point in their lifetime. For those of you who may not know, cyberbullying is defined as willful and repeated harm inflicted through the use of computers, cell phones, and other electronic devices. The medium used is what differentiates cyberbullying from traditional in-person bullying. Students who are victims of cyberbullying are less likely to seek out help than those who are victims of traditional bullying. And some studies have found that young cyberbullying victims may be twice as likely to engage in self-harming behaviors as non-victims. With technology only continuing to grow, issues with cyberbullying are only expected to continue growing with it. Some areas in the United States and around the world have adjusted their bullying laws to include cases of cyberbullying, but with cyberbully victims being less likely to seek help, students need to be made aware of effective ways to stop cyberbullying before it gets out of hand. Our research has been looking at just that. We collected responses to a survey from a national sample of about 5,500 middle and high school students. Specifically, we were interested in those students who had been cyberbullied in their lifetime, about 34% in this particular sample, and what they did that worked to stop it. The question of what worked was open-ended, so students could explain any and everything they did, and we coded their responses to come up with the most common, most effective ways to stop cyberbullying. What we found didn't quite come as a surprise to me as a student of psychology, but is probably unknown to many of the children who are experiencing cyberbullying. Just over 25% of victims said that blocking the cyberbully worked. About 17% more said that ignoring the cyberbullying was what made the difference. Out of the over 20 different responses to cyberbullying that we found, these two stood out as the most common, most effective ways to stop cyberbullying. So what's next? Making this information available to schools will be the most important step towards stopping cyberbullying. While there is never a guarantee that a particular solution will work in every situation, making sure that victims know that there are ways to take back control can have a lasting impact. Getting this information out to the students whose lives have been affected by cyberbullying could potentially prevent many students from causing harm to themselves, as well as giving them back a safe and happy online experience.
Any questions from our judges?
I just have one. So as a parent, are there indicators that you can, certain indicators that you can tell that your child has been bullied by or affected by cyberbullying?
How do you tell? You know, that's a difficult question to answer just because our research wasn't specifically looking at that. However, I would guess that a lot of the indicators are probably the same as traditional bullying. The only thing then just being that they are less likely to reach out to you. So if you're seeing maybe signs of depression or anxiety, it might be something worth looking at.
All right. Next up is Marissa Becker and Camry Slagle from Kinesiology, presenting on injury predictors in a distance runner population.
New year, new me. That's what we all say when the new year rolls around. 45% of Americans said that they would either like to lose weight or get in shape for their 2018 resolutions. They achieved this by setting a variety of goals, from exercising 7 days a week to doing a couch to 5K or even running a marathon. I'm Camry Slagle.
And I'm Marissa Becker, and we're kinesiology students studying with Dr. Stowe. Part of the problem with these New Year's fitness resolutions is that so many people end up being burnt out or injured by the end of their training due to improper training, too much training, or not enough training. There are few, if any, tests that can accurately predict injury for these populations. We are studying the marathon running class to see if we can find predictors of injury.
We base our test off a series of demographic questions and a physical assessment, including range of motion measurements, a movement screen, including portions such as a deep squat, an inline lunge, and a hurdle step, as well as a balance test.
We also are using a survey that was made by an orthopedic clinic, and part of our research will be to validate this survey. It asks questions about their past hip injury and their current level of functioning in their hip. Some of the questions could include, do you feel any uncomfortable catching or locking in your hip? Do you feel loose after warming up? And how does your hip affect your current level of functioning?
Most tests ask you to associate a number with a question, such as, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say? However, this test is unique in that each of the 10 questions is actually a solid black line where participants can mark on that line how they perceive their current level. We then use a ruler to score and associate a number with their responses. We have completed a pre-assessment before they started training, a mid-assessment, and are currently doing their final assessments before the race. We joke around saying that we've never been more excited when someone is injured.
With our findings, we hope that we can make a test that anyone can use to predict their injury and give them prevention exercises. We hope to help active individuals, athletes, and clinicians by forming an app which will have a test that participants can go through and prevention exercises if the participant is deemed at risk of injury.
Our hope is to increase people's motivation, decrease the cost of healthcare, and decrease the time that people have to take off from training by allowing them to exercise in a safe and sustainable way based on their current strength, balance, and mobility. We want you to be able to stick to the fitness goals that you create for yourself without having to be hindered as much by the pesky little injuries that pop up along the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
So is this a replication study? Has another university or clinic done this kind of research to predict the injury?
The survey that we are using as part of our injury prediction has been replicated before by an orthopedic clinic. So we are replicating that to see if that has validity. And then our balance test has been replicated and has been used as a pretty good injury predictor. But then our test with the squat, the inline lunge, and the hurdle step is not as, it has not really been used before as an injury predictor. So we are seeing if we can predict injuries with that test.
Are you giving guidance to those in the study before their marathon?
No, we are not doing that because we don't want to hinder the results that we're seeing.
Yep. Yep.
All right, next up, I'm pleased to welcome Kaitlin Theis and Josie Zimble from Communication Sciences and Disorders. Most welcome.
Imagine your mom suddenly has a stroke and all of a sudden has difficulty forming words and sentences to talk to you. You would want the professionals who are working with her to provide her with the best and most up-to-date care possible to help her speak once again. This is evidence-based practice.
My name is Josie Zimble.
And I'm Kaitlin Theis.
And we are studying to be speech therapists and audiologists. In this situation, speech therapists would be the ones working with your mom to help her improve her ability to speak. They also work with people with a variety of other communication impairments, including people who stutter, children with language delays, those with hearing loss, and people who have suffered a traumatic brain injury. According to the American Speech-Language Hearing Association, over 40 million Americans have communication impairments today.
The goal of our study is to better the services for this large population of people by finding ways to keep speech therapists up to date on new therapies and technologies to better their practice. In our ever-growing field, it is necessary that speech therapists constantly consult research to update their practice. This is evidence-based practice. Evidence-based practice is made up of 3 pillars: work experience, consulting research, and considering the patient's values. The use of all 3 of these pillars in combination is necessary to provide etiquette care for clients.
Our study looks specifically at the research component of evidence-based practice. This is the component that allows speech therapists to access peer-reviewed articles and stay up to date on the newest therapies. Previous research has shown that in our profession and other healthcare professions, clinicians are not accessing the research component of evidence-based practice due to a variety of barriers. Without the use of research, speech therapists are not staying up to date on the newest discoveries being found in our field. Therapies and technology are constantly altered and perfected, and staying up to date on this information will increase the successful outcomes for the people that we serve.
Limited research has been conducted on the use of evidence-based practice within our field since 2005. This is the same year that new standards were implemented requiring an emphasis in both undergraduate and graduate programs for research.
To determine if the implementation of research in our field has changed since 2005, we developed and distributed a survey to practicing speech therapists to determine their current use of research in their practice. Our survey focused on what helps and what hinders speech therapists in accessing and implementing research-based practice, as well as what undergraduate and graduate programs can do better to help prepare future speech therapists for the use of research in their practice.
Preliminary results suggest that the access and implementation of research-based practice varies depending upon work environment, access to resources, and allotted time to review research articles. The information gained from our survey will help our field better learn to support speech therapists in the access and implementation of research into their practice, thus providing their clients with the best and most up-to-date care to facilitate their communication and improve their overall quality of life.
Yeah, I actually got 2. So you said you sent out a survey to currently practicing
Yes.
doctors? What was your sample set? Was it regional, local, or was it?
Yeah, so we had an email list we have a graduate program here on campus, and so we sent it out to previous supervisors and graduate students from our program, and then we also posted it onto Facebook pages targeted specifically for speech therapists, like SLPs at large, and we got 205 responses.
And then a follow-up to that, you mentioned a couple times that there's barriers to accessing the research.
Mm-hmm.
What was, the most common, one or two answers that you got back?
Yeah, time was a huge barrier, that they didn't have professional time to look into the research, as well as just like unsupportive work environment. So if they wanted high productivity, then again, that time was coming up. They didn't have time to use the research.
Sure, but it's there, but you have patience to meet.
Right.
Instead of,
Right.
All right, thanks.
Pleased to welcome our next speaker, Abe Dickinson from Mathematics, presenting on statistical analysis of redevelopment potential in Eau-Claire County.
Good afternoon. I'm Abe Dickinson, and I'm going to be presenting my research. I think it's fair to assume that the majority of us dislike potholes, and most of us would actually use stronger language to describe our emotions for them. One of the questions I usually come across when I run into these potholes is, why is this still here? Often we see that pothole again and again, and we begin to avoid it. Usually this is because cities and counties don't have the revenue to fix deteriorating infrastructure as it happens. So a solution that they usually use is to take revenue from new development and funnel it back into old infrastructure to redevelop that. This obviously is not a sustainable solution because your city has to be ever growing and increasing at a faster rate. So we're looking for alternate solutions. One solution suggested by Charles Mahone of Strongtown suggests that we use redevelopment projects, which are incremental projects such as planting sidewalk trees and painting crosswalks that are simple for the government to do, that will increase the revenue for that area because it increases the value of the neighborhood. My research specifically is focused on finding locations within Eau-Claire County that have the highest redevelopment potential. I did this by obtaining a data set of about 300 houses and statistically analyzed the revenue for those homes with the attributes. After doing this, I found that the home's IL ratio, which is the improvement value to land value, the lot size, the square footage, and the year built all had a large impact on if the revenue was positive or negative. What I found, or what this tells me, is that if a home has high IL ratio, high lot size, high square footage, and a newer home, it's going to have higher revenue. This is pretty inherent. We all would assume this. But what we're focused on is redevelopment. So I want to look at homes that have a lower IL ratio but higher lot size and square footage, because the lot size and square footage is something we can't change, but the IL ratio is. Because if we increase the neighborhood value, it increases the whole value around or for every home, so then we can increase the revenue. What I propose to do is create interactive heat maps that allow city and county planners to look at various heat maps of IL ratio and the revenue and the lot size to determine areas with the highest redevelopment potential, thus increasing the neighborhood's value, and hopefully you don't have to run into potholes anymore. Thank you.
Any questions from our judges?
So what were a couple of statistical analysis tools you used when you did your research? What did you
So I used R for statistical programmers, and I used stepwise regression, and I built simple models myself. So I used a couple different methods to try and build the model that would best predict what the revenue for a home was. And the stepwise regression actually gave us the best model.
So your heat maps that you generated for the area, did you identify, was it pinpoint enough to say, here's a 3-block wide area to actually identify a specific area, or was it
Yeah,
general trend?
So it pinpoints a more specific area. We can change the size of the dots on the heat map to help us to visualize it better. And one specific area was just southeast of the university towards South Middle School, has quite or a higher redevelopment potential compared to like the student housing right across in Third Ward.
And then follow up to that, did you actually go and, the areas you identified based on statistics, did you go drive around the neighborhoods and see if that lined up with what you're seeing?
I have not, no.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have Emily Finger and Dee Vang from Geology presenting on assessment of long-term groundwater level records in Wisconsin.
Hello, my name is Emily Finger, and I'm a sophomore studying hydrogeology and chemistry.
And my name is Dorothy Vang. I'm also a geology major, and I'm a senior with an interest in hydrogeology. So Wisconsin relies heavily on its water resources. We use about 9 billion gallons of water per day, and the average household uses 300 gallons of water per day. When it rains, some of this water can infiltrate through the ground to become groundwater.
And increases in groundwater levels make areas more prone to flooding. And according to the U.S. Geological Survey, flooding is Wisconsin's most costly natural disaster. These costs include rescue and relief efforts, cleanup operations, rebuilding homes, buildings, and damaged facilities, and the expenses of the loans for these damaged facilities.
In Wisconsin, climate records have shown that precipitation has increased over the past century. However, little information is known about how much of this actually infiltrates through to impact the groundwater level elevation. Our research investigates long-term groundwater level trends in Wisconsin and its relationship to changes in precipitation over the last 80 years.
So using statistical analyses, our research found increases in precipitation to be strongly correlated to increases in groundwater levels in many regions of Wisconsin, with dramatic increases in the last 15 years. This result is critical to the communities and economy of Wisconsin.
According to the USGS, massive flood events happen at least once every decade. In the most recent event in 2016, that left northwestern Wisconsin with costs and damages up to $30 million. Flooding impacts everyone, including individual homes, businesses, and you.
And not only is flooding a costly disaster, but floodwaters may also cause CAFOs lagoons to overflow. CAFOs are concentrated animal feeding operations, and they produce 5 tons of animal waste for every U.S. citizen. There's also been a 600% increase in CAFOs in Wisconsin in the last 10 years alone. And the liquid manure from CAFOs contain high levels of ammonia and hydrogen sulfide. And when these hazardous pollutants are released into the environment, it can cause severe health issues to the public. So by knowing the locations in Wisconsin that have significant increases in groundwater levels, we can help prepare for future flooding events in these areas as precipitation continues to increase into the future. So ultimately, we can save the state more time and money.
And with the current demand for clean water, by understanding the groundwater elevations and how they change, that can help us maintain resources for a more sustainable future. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, the obvious question. Where are the worst areas in Wisconsin?
They are in the southwest area. Southwest, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Heading towards Iowa?
Yeah. Is that where Iowa is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So precipitation does increase all over the state right now.
Mm-hmm.
And in conjunction with that, we are seeing rises in the groundwater elevation. So all over the state, we're having increases in water elevation.
Well, I'm even more curious. How about where we are now? What's happening in our area, would you say?
We did not have enough information to look specifically in Eau-Claire because a lot of the groundwater level data we got didn't fit our parameters.
Does the kind of analysis that you do, does it allow you to also be predictive into the future of areas that are going to suffer higher groundwater and more floods or anything, or is it only more looking at past trends and seeing what the current is?
We mainly just looked at the past trends, like over the last 80 years, but where we're currently going with our research, we're just focusing on the last 15 years, and they're showing much greater increases, in the groundwater.
Have you considered trying to predict next year's sample set?
No. Yeah, we still have to do other investigations before doing that.
Thank you. All right, next up, I'm pleased to welcome Alyssa Greene from Communication and Journalism, presenting on UW Eau Claire and the Something New ASB Domestic Intercultural Immersion.
All right. So when we all hear of a spring break trip, we think of like the beach or, maybe someplace warm or maybe even just home. But what about like a place like Clarkston, Georgia? That's kind of an odd place. My name is Alyssa Greene, and I'm a social work major working for the Communication and Journalism. And I did my research on the alternative of spring break trip to Clarkston, Georgia. We focused on EDI initiatives. These contain equity, diversity, and inclusivity. These, the University of Wisconsin wants to let students gain experiences and, have an integrative learning experience. So through that, they offer different spring break trips. One is our trip, and it is offered through recruitment or Nicole Schulte's communication and journalism class. She incorporates integrative learning, which has 3 aspects. One is the connections to experience. The second is connections across disciplines, and then the transfer between contexts. So what this means is basically we want to give the students a positive experience, and then they bring it back, and they use it in their everyday lives back here at home. So what did we do? So on the way down, we stopped in Springfield, Illinois, and St. Louis, Missouri. They got to explore different areas and different cultures and try different foods. And then we went down to Clarkston, Georgia, where we stayed a week with about, I would say, 24 other individuals. We watched documentary on refugees and immigration, and we focused on going to different cultures, trying a lot of great different food. And then we also went and toured Atlanta, got to go about our own, and then we also had a learning experience, the nonviolence training during Martin Luther King Jr.'s time of the civil rights movement. This allowed students to act as different aspects of human rights and civil rights when it's portrayed. It's just a way of handling it. So then we went down to Selma, Alabama, where we had a history tour with Joanne Bland about our history and the civil rights movement, and then the slavery reenactment, where students got to participate. My research created a pre- and post-trip survey. These students got to see the values of different cultures. So I asked 3 questions. I value my learning in new ways to communicate with other cultures, and the numbers went up. The students agreed. Interacting with people from other cultures is a rewarding experience. The numbers went up from 22 to 24. I value my relationships, the ideas belonging to different cultures. So that was another question. And the numbers went up. So these included from the students and from their ideas.
I'm curious, before people went on this trip, was there any kind of preparation?
In Nicole Schultz's class, there was preparation. So I did 2 different types of surveys. I did one just for her class and one for a general population. So the one in Nicole's class was able to get a kind of a feedback on human rights and stuff like that. And then the general population, there was only one other student that went on it previous years. So they were able to, they didn't experience a lot. And I find the numbers went up to, from 2, I went to the positively agree, so they went up from just sort of agree or maybe disagree to extremely agree. So they went up and it actually improved their experiences, and they're still talking about it to this day.
All right, we're halfway through our pitches. Next up is Emily Gullerud from Mathematics, presenting on creating artistic designs using hyperbolic geometry.
Hello, my name is Emily Gullerud, and I work at the intersection of mathematics and art. More specifically, I create computer-generated mathematical art utilizing certain types of symmetry. How I do this is the following. I start with a source image, which can be an image of whatever you'd like, possibly a picture of Chancellor Jim. And then you set up a blank image, which is just full of black pixels. You then establish a function, which maps the pixels from the source image to the black image. You can think of this, the black image, as a canvas, and your source image as a palette of paint colors. And then the function that you choose just tells you where to paint each of the pixels. This is similar to color by numbers, perhaps. And depending on what kind of function I pick, I'll have certain types of symmetry within the design, such as this one has translational and mirror symmetry, and other ones can also have rotational symmetry. Previous work on creating these types of mathematical art has been computationally expensive. So I devised a method using properties from number theory in order to make my designs much more quickly. Another thing that people have done in the past with these designs is let themselves be restricted to Euclidean geometry, whereas I utilize hyperbolic geometry. Now, what are these terms, Euclidean and hyperbolic geometry? Well, we live in a world governed by Euclidean geometry, where if you take 2 points in space, say me and the provost, the shortest distance between us is going to be a straight line. However, if we were living in a world governed by hyperbolic geometry, the shortest distance between us is either going to be a straight line or it's going to be some sort of curve like a semicircle. These are called geodesics. In terms of this image here, the geodesics are going to be vertical lines coming out from the bottom of the image, or they're going to be semicircles where the center of the circle is going to be at the bottom of the image. Another thing that we did new with these designs is, like I said before, our source image could be whatever we wanted. So why not use one of these designs as our source image? And that's exactly what we did. You can think of this as taking your favorite art piece, such as the Mona Lisa perhaps, and just using colors from that in order to make another design. And this has never been done before using mathematical art. Our work has impacts in both the mathematical and artistic communities. Much of our work has significant ties to complex analysis, which is a fundamental field of mathematics that most undergraduates study, undergraduate mathematics majors, that is. Our work is going to be featured in a complex analysis handbook to be published in 2019, and also our images can be used as visual tools for teaching complex analysis to undergraduate mathematics students. As far as the artistic communities go, there actually is a very large and thriving mathematical art community throughout the world. And this piece, entitled Blue Gold Fireworks, was featured at a mathematical art exhibit at a National Mathematics Conference in January in San Diego, California. And I hope to have more of my art featured in these exhibits throughout the world. Thank you. Oh no, actually it doesn't have to do with the power band. This was a picture of some buoys sitting on a dock. It was just a stock image I found online.
All right. Next up we have Kendall Lake and Megan McHenry from the Watershed Institute and Social Work presenting on offset study abroad.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm Kendall Lake.
And I'm Megan. Nice to see y'all here. How many people here have studied abroad or wish to study abroad?
Awesome. Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to study abroad myself and loved every minute of my experience. In January of last year, I spent 14 days with Indian students at the Sri Ram College of Commerce in New Delhi, India. There were new foods, new places, and new experiences with amazing people I'll never forget. Studying abroad was one of the best opportunities I've had at UWEC, and I'm so grateful our university offers such a wide diversity of programs. However, my study abroad experience didn't come without a cost, an environmental cost to be exact. My flight to and from India emitted CO2, a gas contributing to our Earth's climate and causing negative impacts in our environments. But our campus decided it wasn't going to sit idly by and watch the world melt. In 2008, the University of Wisconsin-Eau-Claire signed the American College and University President's Climate Commitment. By signing this, we agreed to reducing our carbon emissions. I was a part of the team collecting campus emission data, and we quickly found transportation to be one of the largest emission sectors. Roughly 400 UWEC students lived out their dreams by studying abroad this past academic year. In order to offset their air travel, we would have to recycle an additional 110 garbage trucks of waste, or allow almost 60,000 trees to grow for over 10 years. Think about that impact for a second.
We don't want students to stop studying abroad because, as Megan mentioned, the experience changed her life. So we partnered together to develop and introduce a program that would allow students to continue studying abroad while simultaneously working toward the university's goal of carbon neutrality. The proposed program would entail establishing a mandatory $10 fee per study abroad student, which could then be matched by the university to have a total contribution of $20 per study abroad student for to go towards purchasing their carbon offsets. I know some of you in here may not know what carbon offsets are, but they're really quite simple. When you put money towards carbon offsets, you're putting money towards programs that encourage sustainable initiatives and cancel out carbon emissions at the same time. Things such as planting trees or capturing methane at landfills. Now, this is twofold. We want to help the university reach its goal of carbon neutrality, and we also want to allow students studying abroad the opportunity to give back and contribute to a greener world. So we want to establish a successful program that not only allows us to track the emissions emitted in students' flights, but also what we're offsetting through the offset program. That way we can see what works and what doesn't, and we can continuously improve. If the university truly wants to promote its international education without sacrificing its value of sustainability, then getting behind this carbon offset program is the best way to accomplish those goals. Thank you.
What percentage of our carbon footprint comes from travel? You mentioned it was the largest.
It's one of the largest. So transportation, heating, electricity kind of take the most. Transportation, I think, takes about 33%, and then about 25% for the other two. So one of the biggest ones, but as years go on, it changes.
Do you know how much of that is due to study abroad versus
Yep.
all the times I'm driving to Madison?
Yeah. Study abroad is about 2,000 metric tons of CO2.
Yeah, I think it was like about 25 to 30% of the transportation sector itself.
So the rest could be from employees commuting.
Right,
to campus.
exactly. Yeah, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Kayla Gate, Heather Weiss, and Emily Witt from Psychology presenting on a novel procedure to assess impulsivity and self-control in adolescent rats.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kayla Gate, and this is Heather and Emily, and we're part of a research lab studying impulsivity in the psychology department. We study underneath the supervision of Dr. Carla Lagorio. So could I get a show of hands of how many people sometimes after a long day of work choose to forego the grocery store and instead go through a drive-thru? Yeah, and this is despite knowing the long-term health risks that are associated with this choice. Some of you may do this more often than others as well. This is an example of impulsivity, and although this might not seem that significant, impulsivity is also related to clinical disorders such as pathological gambling, obesity, and substance abuse. To further emphasize the significance, in 2015 alone, 21.7 million people entered substance abuse treatment centers in the U.S. And additionally, this was estimated to cost us approximately $740 billion annually to treat these individuals.
Because of societal costs and concerns, researchers have been interested in studying ways to decrease impulsivity. One issue is that these studies tend to be very long-lasting and costly, which they usually last up to about 10 months. This is what our lab is aiming to address. We've been developing procedures that will reduce the time it takes to study impulsivity and which will speed up efforts to increase self-controlled choices. Not only can we start diagnoses sooner, but also treatments. This might surprise you, but impulsive behaviors are often modeled in the non-human laboratory. Indeed, different variables that are anticipated to predict impulsive behaviors are often looked at in animals before they're assessed in humans. Because of the importance of studying impulsivity in non-humans compared with the excessive amount of time it takes, our lab has determined that it's important to try and find a way to shorten this and see if we can still generate reliable and valid treatments in the process within the shorter time frame.
Through our research, we've been able to reduce the time it takes to collect data from 10 months down to just 1 week. We've been comparing our results with that of the more established yet lengthy procedure, and we've been yielding very reliable data, despite ours taking a fraction of the time. Our rapid results have huge implications, allowing researchers to save time and expenses when studying impulsivity, in ways to decrease studying impulsivity. In addition, it allows us to examine time-sensitive developmental periods such as adolescence and laboratory animals. Now think back to yourself, sometimes choosing the fast food over the healthy home-cooked meal, and to the 21.7 million Americans that enter substance treatment centers every year. If we knew that these individuals had a predisposition to impulsive choices, we could intervene sooner and help decrease this costly problem. Thank you.
So is there a correlation between convenience versus impulsivity? I mean, or is it not correlated, or?
Convenience as in, like, if something's easier to obtain, like, if you can get something sooner, it's typically more reinforcing for you. So taking less time to go to the grocery store, that might take you an hour, and then you go home, you have to spend 45 minutes making dinner. That's obviously going to start looking a lot less attractive than, oh, I can swing by and get my meal in 5 minutes and it's going to be delicious. So there's definitely, like, the correlation between convenience and impulsivity.
The difference with convenience is the payout. If the convenient thing doesn't give you as much, or if it's not as good for you, it's an impulsive choice to go with convenience over spending a little bit more time to get either higher quality or excessive amounts.
So if it negatively affects your health or some other factor, that would be, and you know it.
Yeah, usually when you pick, like, the drive-through option, you're not thinking about these long-term options. Right. You're thinking about the immediate right now. Right. So it's a lot harder to change your look to think about that longer, like, more rewarding choice futuristically.
Versus when you could just have it, like, immediately. Right. It's more like instant gratification.
Sure. Sometimes it inspires remorse.
Don't we all?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Tanner Olson from Material Science and Engineering presenting on investigation of surface composition and topography of Rebco superconducting tape using auger electron spectroscopy.
Can everyone hear me back? We're all good? Awesome. All right, hello, my name is Tanner Olson, and I'm a junior here with 2 majors in physics and material science. And I'm here to tell you today about my research that I've been conducting here at my time at UW-Eau-Claire. Now, what if I could tell you that my research could reduce the cost of the hospital bill for one of the most common operations that people can undergo, an MRI. These machines operate by using an electromagnet, or rather, a magnet that uses a large amount of electricity to create a magnetic field thousands of times larger than your standard household fridge magnet. These devices are typically made up of a special class of materials known as superconductors, with their unique quirk being the fact that if you get them down to a temperature colder than the footbridge in January, if it's even possible, they can conduct electricity without energy loss. The most common type of superconductors that's currently used in applications are expensive, to keep cold, and run. The material I study, however, which is an experimental superconducting material called YBCO, can run theoretically 50 times cheaper by using a more efficient and cheaper coolant. Now, this sounds great, and you might be thinking, why isn't this already a thing? Why is someone doing research and being paid to do it? But the material itself has a couple problems making it reliable for usage currently, with the most prominent issue being a weak mechanical strength. My research, our group has had a partnership with an external industrial company out in New York, and they provide us with our superconducting samples. From there, my work has been making leaps and bounds in the understanding of the crystal structure and of the fracture patterns that the material structure has through high magnification imaging. I've also been able to quantify prominent distributions and create patterns that have been able to go along and set the pace for future research in this field, in addition to aiding the company in the beginnings of improving the quality of the materials to make it more reliable to their consumers. As I mentioned before, these materials have large potential in improving MRIs and the medical field overall as a whole. By making these machines run off of a cheaper magnet, it allows hospitals not only to save money in running these machines, but also unlocks the ability to make MRIs bigger for patient ease and comfort without losing any of the resolution for their use in their application. In addition, by making these machines cheaper, we can give access to less modernized countries and other places around the world to be able to house and run these life-saving machines to increase patient survivability and be able to diagnose them more efficiently. So, I'd like to thank all of you for being here and supporting this fantastic opportunity and program, and I'd like to thank each one of you judges for taking time of your day to be here. Any questions?
MRIs would actually get cheaper, or would their profit margins just
I guess that's more up to the hospital side, but theoretically, if you're able to reduce that, you're able to make it more available to everyone else, and you're able to expand the ideas. Instead of having them this very small compressed tube that's claustrophobic and very compressive, you're able to expand it to the potential to where maybe a patient in a wheelchair can actually get in there and not be restricted by that. So even if it doesn't reduce the cost, it gives it more accessibility, more availability to patients that might need it. Anything else? Thank you.
All right, next up we have Rita Post and Tenny Jacobson from Computer Science and Mathematics presenting on secure and efficient message digest with the braid theory algorithm for digital signatures.
Hello, I'm Tenny Jacobson.
And I'm Rita Post.
And we are both math majors and computer science minors. So, last year we opened up a brand new research project because of the impact it can have on all of you. Seeing how cyber attacks have resulted in over $400 billion annually, there's a clear need for an increase in our digital security. For example, just last September, over 143 million Americans had their identities compromised because of a security breach at Equifax. So, how can we do better? How can we better protect our legal documents, our bank accounts, our very identities?
Well, Tenny, one way is by signing the data. So when you sign something, it verifies that you and you alone wrote that message and you have access to that information. This is called a digital signature. As the word digital suggests, it's going to involve a computer. The computer can protect our data by encryption, and how encryption works is it essentially applies an incredibly difficult math problem to our data, making that data unreadable. And the only way the computer can access that data is if it has a key that's able to reverse the math applied to the data. However, computers have only gotten faster and faster over the past 50 years. So much so that they don't even need that key anymore to open the data. This is a problem because now hackers can get our data. One solution could be to apply an even more difficult math problem, and that's where our research comes in.
Due to our interest in braid theory, we decided to investigate really difficult math problems inside of this area of study. After looking at all of the problems in there, we found one that held a lot of promise. It was a really difficult math problem. It's similar to the system already in place, except that we are dealing with non-commutative numbers, which means that this braid plus this braid does not always equal this braid plus this braid. So that makes it infinitely more difficult for a computer to guess our public key, which we use to encrypt our data, and then the private key, which we use to unlock our data. It makes it really difficult.
So now that we have a sufficiently difficult math problem, we can protect your personal information or your bank accounts. We could even help our country out. We could protect against any type of cyber warfare. For example, what if another country hacked into our transportation system? They could derail trains and stop traffic. They could even hack into a nuclear power plant and leak nuclear waste onto our lands. We need better protection, and this research can help us get there. Thank you.
Thanks.
So, is blockchain technology also part of that whole idea?
No, we were actually considering doing our project on blockchain, but we decided on changing up the project. But that was cool that you brought that up.
All right, thank you very much. All right, next up we have Katie Spretzer from Communication Sciences and Disorders presenting on video self-modeling as an at-home intervention tool for individuals with voice disorders.
Hello, my name is Katie Spretzer, and I am a Communication Sciences and Disorders major, and my study evaluated the effectiveness of video self-modeling as an at-home intervention tool for individuals with voice disorders. According to the American Speech Language Hearing Association, between 3 and 9% of the U.S. population has a voice disorder. Living with a voice disorder can be difficult, and many individuals often report a negative impact on overall quality of life. With this awareness, it's important to try to find ways to help improve overall quality of life for individuals with voice disorders. Video self-modeling is an observational learning technique based in principles of social cognitive theory and is believed to be effective because it can help increase an individual's belief that they can succeed in completing a task. So what is video self-modeling exactly? It's when an individual views themselves on video while focusing on a target behavior, and typically it shows the individual successfully completing a task or engaging in a behavior. VSM or video self-modeling, has been used in a wide range of disciplines, including academics, sports, and rehabilitation. The field of speech-language pathology has also looked at video self-modeling for traumatic brain injury, stuttering, accent modification, and autism. However, there is little research that has been done on video self-modeling and voice. The present study then aimed to investigate the effectiveness of video self-modeling for individuals with voice disorders, and aimed to answer the question, does video self-modeling impact vocal quality and positive feelings in relation to voice? While the results revealed that there was no physical change in actual vocal quality, there was a positive change seen in self-perceived vocal quality and a reduction in negative impact on quality of life. This is significant because as not only as speech-language pathologists, but as anyone in a human service-based field, we want to constantly find new innovative ways to increase quality of life so that individuals can continue doing the things that they want to do. Additionally, the study found that individuals were more aware, which again, they reported increased levels of awareness, which shows, which can be important for therapeutic gains as speech-language pathologists, as well as anyone working in human-related service fields. And specifically, the awareness helps increase motivation levels as well, which is often a necessary component for positive therapeutic outcomes.
Any questions from our judges?
So the video self-modeling, you said that it helps them to visualize them actually doing something correctly, right? That's what it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
How is it actual video of them doing it once when it was correct, or is it computer generated, or how do you?
Yes, that's a very good question. So for my study, what I did is I took it's called resonant voice, and that's a clinician perceived clear vocal quality. And what we did is we took videos of them performing in that clear vocal quality in the context of a therapy session. But oftentimes, skills worked on in therapy don't generalize to other more functional contexts. So we took the videos and we omitted anything that was considered maybe unclear, as well as the clinician instructions. So it was just them speaking clearly. And then they watched themselves speaking in that clear perceived voice and then completed daily voice recordings following that.
So it's like a highlight reel of a therapy session.
Yeah, kind of. So just kind of showing like the best, like maximum performance.
All right. Next up, we have Ashley Thompson and Samantha Kleik from Geology presenting on waste disposal behaviors of university students.
Hello, I'm Ashley Thompson, and this is my fellow researcher, Samantha Kleik. We're both senior geology majors here at the University of Wisconsin-Eau-Claire. Together with 6 other peers and our mentor, Scott Clark, we are researching waste disposal behaviors and measuring the impact of intervention efforts here on campus. Many of us travel to the Davie Center each day to get lunch. When we're done eating lunch, we need to dispose of our waste. The amount of waste disposed of in the Davie Center each week is pretty impressive, 7 to 9 tons. That's more than 1 ton each day.
With this in mind, we began conducting research in the fall semester of 2016 to determine how our campus disposes of their waste and how effective we are at sorting our waste. Since then, we've conducted research 3 consecutive Tuesdays to determine 3 consecutive Tuesdays each semester from 11:30 to 1:30, the busiest hours of the Davie Center. Our waste audits consist of sorting waste from each of the 3 bins, landfill, compost, and recycling, and sorting out each individual item into the correct category.
This is when we deliver the bad news. As a campus that promotes themselves as being sustainable, we're not all that great at sorting our waste. It turns out that we're often disheartened to find that while doing these audits that the landfill bag weighs more than the recycling and the compost combined. After sorting our waste, our weight goes from around 5 kilograms in our compost before the waste audit, and after we're done, the compost now weighs 10 to 15 kilograms. That's over 100% increase by just sorting the waste correctly.
We've determined that one of the biggest issues to this incorrect sorting can be attributed to these mixed waste combos. So a mixed waste combo has a combination of waste streams within it. As this item here, we have the recyclable bowl and then the lid with compostable food inside, and then the landfill that is, or the fork that is landfill. So 75% of these mixed waste combos enter the landfill each day, and it's in the form of these sushi dough bowls, compostable clamshells, chip bags, and any other way we make our waste into a Russian nesting doll.
It is up to our interpretation that this is done simply for convenience. While we have done different types of intervention efforts with IMC, we've marketed different ways, such as the banners having proper sorting methods. We've seen information in napkin holders. There's also an informal video with Blue, the UW-Eau-Claire mascot, as well as all the bins in the Davie Center. We have standardized to the normal colors of green, blue, and black.
Overall, our findings suggest that intervening in students' waste disposal habits really haven't changed that much. It's challenging to change those behaviors. Therefore, we suggest interventions that target incoming freshmen, such as ambassadors and orientation events, as well as promoting sustainable waste disposal habits through posters, social media, even through our instructors and in our classes. And that's all.
Did you have any data from the previous year? I know that another group of students looked at the similar thing. It getting better? Is it staying the same? Is it getting worse?
We're probably the same group of students, but it's actually pretty constant. It's kind of remaining the same. There have been those additional interventions with the new banners, the new lids, the video, which I don't know if a lot of people have seen yet. And then recently we were actually at
the Eau-Claire Day outside in the center of...
in the student mall. Yeah. And I think that really targeted a lot of students, and they were kind of interacting with us.
All right, next up we have Allison Welter from Biology presenting on analysis of Arabidopsis thaliana red light response mutants identified in a genetic enhancer screen.
My name is Allie Welter, and I'm a biochemistry molecular biology major. Did you know that within the next 30 years, the world population is expected to increase by over 1 billion people? One of the most critical issues our world is facing right now is how to provide enough food for this growing population without taking up more land for farm acreage. Well, I'm involved in a research project that relates to this issue. I work with a plant called Arabidopsis thaliana and study mutant plants with increased sensitivity to red light. This alters how they grow, and implementing similar changes into food crop plants may be agronomically beneficial. So you might be thinking, since farmers need to provide greater amounts of food crops than they have in the past, why wouldn't we just plant the crops closer together? Well, it turns out it's not quite that simple. When food crop plants are grown closely together, they have to compete with each other for sunlight. Shading causes the plants to grow a lot taller than they would under normal conditions, and they end up not being as healthy because of this. Well, my research project provides a potential solution to this issue. The mutant plants I study have increased sensitivity to red light, and this reduces the shade response. If food crop plants acted like our mutant plants, they would have this reduced shade response, and a larger number of them could be grown in a small field. We believe we know why our plants have this increased sensitivity to red light, and engineering this into food crop plants may be potentially beneficial in the agricultural field. In my research specifically, I've worked on a genetic mapping project to try and identify what change in our mutant plants is causing them to have this increased sensitivity to red light. This involved me creating specific populations of plants from which I isolated whole genomic DNA for sequencing and analysis. This analysis identified likely causative mutations in a gene that codes for a protein known as phytochrome B or Phy-B. Phy-B is the major protein that this plant uses to detect red light, which is why I'm led to believe that the mutation in this gene is likely causing the plants to have this reduced shade response. If the same mutation could be introduced into the Phy-B gene of a crop plant, possibly by gene editing, we may be able to grow more of that crop in a smaller area without affecting the health of the plant. This could prevent the cost of food crops from increasing as the world population continues to grow and benefit society overall. This project was funded by the National Science Foundation as they're interested in this agricultural issue and my research project's connections to it. Thank you.
So is this something that would be able to be applicable to all types of crops or only certain kinds? Or?
Well, if a lot of crops use phytochrome specifically to sense light, and they all will have this shade response where they won't be as healthy when they're growing in shaded light, so it could possibly be applicable to different kinds of crops.
All right, next up we have Nancy Junga and Krista Young from Psychology presenting on cognitive biases towards self-harm as a function of NSSI history.
Hello, everyone. I'm Krista Young.
And I'm Nancy Junga.
And we're part of the Suicide Prevention and Research Collaborative here on campus, which is directed by Dr. Jennifer Muhlenkamp in the Psychology Department. So our mission is really to prevent as well as better understand factors that are related to suicide, which is the second leading cause of death of young adults in the United States. Non-suicidal self-injury, or NSSI as we call it, is the direct and intentional damage of bodily tissue without the intent to die. It's estimated that about 1 in 5 young adults have engaged in NSSI worldwide. Past research has shown that those who currently engage in this type of self-injury are quicker to identify with self-damaging stimuli, such as images or words, and experience more negative thought patterns, such as hopelessness and suicidal ideation, relative to those who don't self-injure. However, what we don't know is how these features are impacted once individuals have stopped self-injury. It would be valuable to determine whether these mindsets that one experiences while self-injuring persist once they've stopped. This information may give clinicians and mental health professionals better insight into prevention and treatment.
This gap in literature is what our study aimed to address. Our study included 277 college students with a history of self-injury. We split participants into two groups, those who are currently self-injuring and those who had self-injured in the past but had stopped within the last year. Students' implicit biases were assessed. Those are the knee-jerk reactions that they had to self-injury stimuli. We also looked at variables related to the negative thought patterns that we mentioned earlier. And what we found is that those who had stopped self-injuring experienced less identification with that self-injurious stimuli. And we also found, relative to those who are currently self-injuring, and we also found that of those who had stopped self-injuring, they experienced lower levels of hopelessness and the urge to act immediately to relieve their pain. Our results suggest that the mindset that people experience while self-injuring may not persist throughout their lifetime. This gives an important window of opportunity to intervene with treatment and prevent future relapse of self-injury. Additionally, these variables could be prime targets for cognitive therapies to treat and prevent non-suicidal self-injury. And by decreasing the risk of this, we decrease the risk of young adults of considering and acting on thoughts of suicide. It is our hope that through innovative research and putting our science into practice, that we can continue making longer strides toward creating a world where no lives are lost to suicide. Thank you.
Any questions from our judges?
So just one quick. So when you did your study or evaluation, was the population distribution focused around a certain age group, or was it?
College students, so pretty much 18 to 22, 24.
Did you see it heavier in one direction or the other if you look at the distribution curve, or was it all randomly distributed throughout the?
Not necessarily. There wasn't necessarily a trend with age.
Was it by gender?
I think that typically we see more non-suicidal self-injury conducted by females than males as a whole, but within our particular sample, didn't necessarily see that.
That also could be a matter of who's reporting the self-injury, so whether females or males want to disclose that information to us. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next up we have Melanie Zenz from Philosophy and Religious Studies presenting on Free Willy Isn't Free and Neither Are You.
Hello everyone, my name is Melanie Zenz. I'm a junior here at UWEC studying philosophy. And just by a quick show of hands, I'd like to know who here believes you freely choose your actions? Okay, it looks like about most of us then. So I do disagree with most of you then, which might sound like a horrible thing to disagree with, but bear with me here, because this is the topic of my research. The question of free will, which is the question of whether or not we have free will, by which I mean the ability to control our actions. And I'd like to give you guys a quick example of one of the reasons that I reject this, with a little bit of help from the audience. So, Chase, if you had to choose between drinking coffee and tea, which would you choose?
Coffee.
Why?
Because I like it.
Did you choose to like coffee?
Yes.
Did you choose to like coffee?
Yes.
Did you choose to like coffee?
Yes.
If he keeps answering yes to that question, this conversation will literally go on forever. I only have 3 minutes. The point I'm trying to make here is that we base our decisions on some factor, like a desire. And even if we did choose that factor, we didn't choose the basis upon which we chose that factor, or the basis of the basis of the basis on to infinity. We can't make an infinite amount of decisions, so at some point, we just have a desire. And we didn't choose it, but it causes us to make the choices we make. And I think this is really important because the question of free will isn't just relevant, but central to the way we understand and respond to human behavior. Some people think it has negative implications for this, but I would argue that if we can let go of the idea that we have free will, it also forces us to part with our concept of praise and blame, which makes compassion and understanding the only sensible response. Imagine, for example, that you're the CEO of a major multi-billion-dollar company, and you come across a homeless person on your way to work. Now, if you believe that both of your situations are purely the result of biological and environmental factors over which neither of you have any control, would it make any sense for you to feel superior to this person? No, because the absence of free will entails the absence of judgment, which allows the presence of compassion. So as daunting as my conclusion might sound, if we can really embrace the idea that free will does not exist, the resulting attitude allows us to meet the need we have to take a more compassionate approach to the people we encounter in our daily lives. Thank you.
Any questions from our judges?
You got us thinking.
They're all wowed.
Yeah.
So is your argument that there is no free will?
Right.
Or that free will?
Yeah.
So
it's not
he
a
doesn't
thing.
get to pick at some point that he likes stuff because it's predisposed.
Mm.
So did you choose to do this topic?
I wanted to do this topic. I didn't choose to want to do this topic.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, last but not least, our final speaker, Elizabeth Laskowski from Material Science and Engineering, presenting on measuring smart abilities of copolymers with PDMA EMA.
Have you ever had a frenemy? One of those people who's your best friend in one moment and then suddenly switch and hates you the next? Most people would agree that they want nothing to do with those kinds of people. However, when that love-hate switchability can be applied to polymers, they actually have the potential to be used in some really impactful applications, such as enhanced oil recovery. Hi, my name is Liz Laskowski, and I've studied smart polymers for the past 4 years in the Material Science department. So, first of all, polymers are just long-chain molecules made up of repeating units, a lot like if you took paper clips and strung them together to make a chain. And we look at two different polymers that are joined together in the middle, one end that always likes water, and the other end that will switch from loving water to hating water when the temperature or pH around it is increased. And why we care about these smart molecules are because they could be used as smart molecules for applications like enhanced oil recovery, where they can reduce the number of new sites that need to be drilled by recovering more of the oil out of the original sites. So traditional drilling methods leave a lot of oil behind, and what they're trying to do is use water to go down and push more of that oil up out of the ground. But the problem is water and oil hate each other. So they try to get them to like each other more by adding a polymer which makes the water thicker, and by adding a molecule that has one end that likes the water and another end that likes the oil. And this works great to help them mix, but the problem is when they bring it up out of the ground, it doesn't want to separate. So this is where our frenemy-like smart polymers can help. So we have one end that always likes the water and one end that will switch from loving the water to hating it and instead loving the oil. And this change occurs due to a change in temperature. So in the case of enhanced oil recovery, when it starts above ground, both polymers like the water, it goes down to the warmer environment under the ground where it switches to liking the oil, helps the water and oil mix, brings it back above ground where it cools down, and then the water and oil can separate once again. And the beauty of this is then that water-polymer mixture has the potential to be reused again to go back down and keep recovering more of the oil. So these smart polymers can be quite useful. And so in our lab, we synthesize these polymers with varying polymer lengths and different ratios between one block to the other to understand how we can control the switchability by controlling the polymers rather than the environments in which they are used. Because what we have found is that the polymer lengths and the ratios between the two different polymers affects the temperature at which this change occurs. So perhaps one day we could go to a chart, look at what the environment specifications are for the application, and make the appropriately sized polymer efficiently and effectively so that we can make smarter molecules to be used rather than adjusting the environment in which they are used, especially in the case of enhanced oil recovery. Thanks.
Is this currently being used, or is it still under development?
It's under development, but it's being looked at not only at like the undergraduate level, but also at graduate universities as well, because there's a lot of potential for it to be used.
What's the possible percentage gain from an existing well? That is it a 2x or a percentage increase?
Percentage increased? Well, it would be going down after they've already recovered the oil and it stops bringing more up. So this would be going down to recovers whatever's left. So I'm not sure exactly how much is left, but I know that there's still about 80% of the world's oil is still underground. So. Okay.
All right, so I'd like to give all of our presenters another big round of applause. You all did a phenomenal job. I'd just like to give you all credit for getting up here and getting in front of people and talking about your research. I think from the training to now, tremendous, just very, very well done. So I think the judges here will have a very hard time deliberating. So while we're going to deliberate, feel free to go and have some more refreshments. Gabby will also be picking up your ballots for the People's Choice Prize. So if we don't have a ballot, we have run out of them. So just write the name of your favorite pitch on a piece of paper and hand it to Gabby as she comes around. And we should be back in the next 10 minutes to award the prizes. All right, the moment we have all been waiting for. Before we announce the awards, I'd like to welcome Guy Van Riper from the judging panel to just say a few words of his thoughts of the day.
Thank you. This is my first time being a judge or being part of this competition, if you'd say. But I want to say I was extremely impressed with everybody's presentation skills. And for me, I'm not a perfect presenter by any means, but learning the quick pitch is in our industry or my industry, and as you go throughout your careers, like I talk to VPs, and you got about 3 minutes to get their attention. If not, they're shutting the door or they're on to something else. So great job, everybody. Keep up the good work. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And I would like to thank all of our judges for being here again with us today. So another round of applause for the judges. All right, so I'm going to announce the Social Sciences and Humanities prizes. And just a reminder, each prize category is awarding a first and second place prize. The first place is taking home $250, the second place $125, and the winners will also be invited to compete in the state final at the upcoming Wisconsin Science and Technology Symposium. So, for second place in Social Sciences and Humanities, I'd like to welcome back Kaitlin Theis and Josie Zimble from Communication Sciences and Disorders.
Thank you. What, are you going to organize this, Bill? You get in the middle.
Get in the middle?
Yeah, you get in the middle. Of course. And we're backing you up.
Perfect. Looks good. Nice smiles. 1, 2, 3. Good. Good. And good. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, and first place in Social Science and Humanities goes to Melanie Zenz from Philosophy and Religious Studies. Congratulations, Melanie.
There you go. Perfect. Nice and close and good smiles. 1, 2, 3. Good. Good. And just in case. Good. Thank you.
Congratulations.
We did not choose to give you this award.
Appreciate it happening anyway.
All right, now for science and technology, we have second place goes to Allison Welter from biology. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you. Smiles. 1, 2, 3. Good. Just in case. Good. And good. Thank you.
All right.
All right, and first place in science and technology goes to Elizabeth Laskowski from material science and engineering. Congratulations.
Great job.
Thanks. Congratulations. So I'd like to invite Dr. Matt Jewell up to the stage to present the People's Choice Award as well as the Student Club Award as well.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. So thank you very much. So I don't know if it's quite as good as a check for $250, but for the People's Choice Award, we have a lovely UW Eau-Claire mug filled with some very excellent goodies and a gift certificate for the cabin downstairs. And it turns out that great minds think alike. So the winner of our People's Choice Award is Elizabeth Laskowski, Material Science and Engineering. Come on up, back up, Liz. You got to change your.
I love it. Nice smile. Good. Thank you.
And the last thing we have to award today, you may have noticed on your ballot. Oh, sorry. I don't get to keep that one. I think that's one that has a check on it, Liz. So. You may have noticed also on your ballot today, we asked for those of you that are students here if you're part of a student group, and that's because we wanted to be able to give a prize for the student group that brought the most people here. Our good friends at Sodexo downstairs generously donated pizzas, so you can have pizza at your next event. And there was a close race. Material Science and Geology came very close, but I'm sorry. The winner was the Research and Inventors Club, represented here by Annika Johnson. So I don't know what their next event is, but we'll all have to crash it, I guess. So anyway, thank you again for coming out. I was just really impressed by the diversity of presentations and just by your poise, ability to talk us through some complex issues. It's a great skill. Also, just the improvement and the changes over the last couple months as you worked on it, really, really great to see. So thanks so much. Thanks for taking 2 hours out of your Tuesday. Go have a great night.